They dropped leaflets from the sky. They blasted recordings of my brother's voice through massive speakers hidden in the trees. "Come out, Hiroo! The war is over!" But I knew it was a lie. It was always an Allied trick. I gripped my Arisaka rifle tighter, the wood worn smooth by decades of sweat and paranoia. I had my orders, burned into my soul by Major Taniguchi. It may take 3 years, it may take 5, but we will come back for you. So I waited, for 29 years. I was 22 years old when I arrived on Lubang Island in the Philippines. It was December 1944, and the empire was bleeding. Most soldiers in the Imperial Japanese Army were taught one simple truth: death is lighter than a feather, but duty is heavier than a mountain. To be captured was the ultimate shame. To die in a banzai charge was the ultimate glory. But I was different. I was an intelligence officer, trained at the elite Nakano school. We were not taught to die. We were taught to survive, to disrupt, to be ghosts. Before I left for the jungle, my commanding officer, Major Yoshimi Taniguchi, gave me an order that would define the rest of my existence. He didn't tell me to fight to the last man. He stood before me, his face stern and unyielding, and said, "You are absolutely forbidden to die by your own hand. It may take 3 years, it may take 5, but whatever happens, we'll come back for you. Until then, so long as you have one soldier, you are to continue to lead him. You may have to live on coconuts. If that's the case, live on coconuts. Under no circumstances are you to give up your life voluntarily." I etched those words into my heart. They were not just orders, they were a sacred promise. In February 1945, the enemy arrived. The Americans swarmed the beaches of Lubang with overwhelming firepower. The Japanese garrison, disorganized and panicked, was crushed within days. Most were killed or surrendered. But true to my orders, I did not die and I did not surrender. I took 3 men, Private Yuichi Akatsu, Corporal Shoichi Shimada, and Private First Class Kinshichi Kozuka, and we vanished into the dense, mountainous interior. We became animals. We moved only at night, sleeping in caves or makeshift shelters hidden by thick vines. We watched the Americans build a radar base. We watched the ships come and go. We were waiting for the counterattack, the glorious return of the Imperial Navy. In October 1945, months after the fighting had stopped, we found a leaflet left behind by local islanders. It was written in Japanese. It read, "The war ended on August 15th. Come down from the mountains." I looked at my men. We were starving, bitten by insects, and exhausted. The temptation to believe those words was overwhelming. But then I looked at the phrasing. It seemed too simple, too convenient. Why would Japan, the land of the gods, ever surrender? It was impossible. I crumpled the paper and threw it into the mud. "It is an Allied propaganda trick," I told them. "They want to lure us out to slaughter us." We tightened our bootlaces, checked our rifles, and retreated deeper into the darkness. The war wasn't over. For us, it was just beginning. Years turned into a blur of green leaves, torrential rain, and gnawing hunger. We didn't just survive in the jungle, we became part of it. We learned to read the wind, to smell the approach of a patrol before we heard their boots. We built bamboo huts with elevated floors to escape the rats and the damp, moving constantly to avoid detection. We were not refugees, we were active combatants. We engaged in what we believed was a necessary guerrilla campaign, burning farmers' crops to deny the enemy supplies, killing cows for meat, and firing warning shots at anyone who ventured too close to our sanctuary. Every piece of information that entered our world was filtered through the lens of my orders. When we saw American battleships sailing past the island in 1950, heading for the Korean War, we didn't know about Korea. We cheered. We thought, finally, the Imperial Navy is launching the counteroffensive. When we found newspapers left by search parties, we analyzed them for hours. We concluded they were sophisticated forgeries made by the Allies to break our spirits. The dates were wrong, we told ourselves. The news was fabricated. The war was still on. But the jungle began to take its toll. The first crack in our resolve didn't come from a bullet, but from weakness. In 1949, Private Akatsu, the youngest and softest of us, slipped away into the night. He had been complaining for months. We thought he had been captured or died in the wild. But later we found notes from him. He had surrendered. We felt a mixture of relief and disgust. He was a traitor, but his betrayal meant the enemy now knew exactly who we were and roughly where we were. We tightened our perimeter. Now there were three: myself, Shimada, and Kozuka. We became harder, more paranoid. Then came 1954. We were on the beach at Gontin trying to repair our gear. A search party, or what we viewed as an enemy patrol, spotted us. Gunfire erupted. It was a chaotic skirmish, sand kicking up around us. When the shooting stopped, Corporal Shimada lay still in the surf. A bullet had pierced his forehead. I stood over his body, my heart hammering against my ribs. The silence of the beach was heavier than the gunfire. Shimada was a good soldier. He had held out for 9 years. His death was tragic, but to me, it was also proof. If the war is over, I reasoned, why are they still shooting at us? Peace does not fire bullets. Peace does not kill men on beaches. We buried Shimada and retreated back into the shadows. Now it was just me and Kozuka, 2 men against the world. We swore a blood oath that we would never let them catch us. We would be the ghosts of Lubang, haunting this island until the emperor himself came to tell us otherwise. For the next 18 years, it was just Kozuka and me. 18 years. Think about that. We watched our uniforms rot off our backs, patching the rags with woven hemp until we looked less like soldiers and more like scarecrows. We maintained our Arisaka rifles with obsessive devotion, lubricating them with stolen coconut oil, keeping the action smooth even as our own bodies grew stiff and scarred. We became twins in thought and action. We didn't need to speak. A glance was enough to coordinate an ambush on a cow or a retreat from a patrol. We were a 2-man army, the last 2 embers of an empire that, unbeknownst to us, had long since burned out. The outside world didn't forget us. In fact, their attempts to trick us grew more elaborate. They stopped just dropping leaflets, they started dropping pieces of our past. In the late 1960s, they dropped photographs of my family. There was my aging mother, standing in front of a house I didn't recognize. There were newspapers showing a Tokyo filled with strange, tall buildings and cars that looked like spaceships. I held the photos over a small fire, watching them curl and blacken. "Look at the shadows," Kozuka said, his voice raspy from disuse. "They are wrong. These are clever fakes created in Hollywood. They want to break us with homesickness." To believe those pictures were real was to admit that we had spent decades fighting a ghost. We couldn't do that. So we chose to believe the lie that gave our suffering meaning. Then came October 19th, 1972. We were in a rice field near the village of Tilik, burning the harvest, our standard guerrilla tactic to deny the enemy supplies. We were careless. A police patrol was closer than we thought. A shot rang out, clean, sharp, and terrifying. I was ahead, sprinting for the tree line. I heard a sickening sound behind me, a wet thud. I turned and saw Kozuka on the ground, a single bullet to the chest. He didn't scream. He just looked up at the sky, his eyes wide with surprise, and then the light went out of them. I dragged his body into the thicket while bullets shredded the leaves around me. I sat with him as his blood soaked into the Philippine soil. For 27 years, I had a shadow, someone to watch my back while I slept, someone to validate my reality. Now, the silence of the jungle was absolute. It crushed me. I was the last piece on the board. I was truly, utterly alone. For 2 more years, I lived as a phantom. I slept clutching my rifle, my finger on the trigger. I was a man out of time, a living ghost haunting the edges of a world that had moved on without me. Then, in February 1974, a young man appeared in my jungle. He wasn't a soldier. He was a Japanese tourist named Norio Suzuki. He had a strange list of things he wanted to find. Lieutenant Onoda, a panda, and the abominable snowman, in that order. He found me first. I jumped him, my rifle aimed at his chest. But he didn't fight. He smiled. He told me the war was over. He told me Japan was prosperous. He begged me to come home. "I cannot," I told him, my voice cracking from years of silence. "I am a soldier. I have orders. I cannot surrender until my commanding officer relieves me. Suzuki understood. He didn't argue. He took my photo and went back to Japan. He found the man who held the key to my freedom. Major Yoshimi Taniguchi was an old man now, running a bookstore. He had long retired from the army, but when he heard I was still fighting his war, he put on his old uniform, which no longer fit, and flew to Lubang, March 9th, 1974. The jungle clearing was hot and humid. I stood at attention, my uniform patched 100 times, my rifle perfectly clean. Major Taniguchi stood before me. He read the order, his voice trembling slightly. Orders from the Special Intelligence Squadron. Imperial Command. All combat activity is to cease immediately. The unit is relieved of all military duties. The words hung in the air. Cease. Relieved. My knees buckled. For 29 years, my rifle had been my limb, my mission had been my soul. I dropped the bolt from my rifle, I unstrapped my sword, I placed them on the ground. I saluted the rising sun flag one last time, and then for the first time since 1944, I wept. Not tears of joy, tears of devastation. We lost, I thought. My friends died for nothing? The 30 years of my life, for nothing? I returned to Japan a hero, but I felt like a stranger. The concrete cities, the neon lights, the soft people. It wasn't the country I had fought to preserve. I had survived the jungle, but I struggled to survive the peace. People call me a legend. They call me the last samurai. But when I look in the mirror, I don't see a legend. I see a soldier who followed his orders too well. I see the ghosts of Shimada and Kozuka standing behind me, forever young, forever waiting in the jungle. I finally laid down my gun. But a part of me never left that island. A part of me is still there, waiting in the dark, listening for the enemy that will never come.